Lawyers of Reddit, what is a detail that your client failed to bring up to you that completely lost you the case? Opposing counsel. Isn't it true you hit victim in the face with a brick? Client. No. Marcus hit him with the brick. I hit him in the back with a piece of wood. He'd sent a photo of his wife's beaten face to his wife with a message saying something along the lines of this: "Do you want this to happen again?" He came across very well in court up to that point, but his mask slipped when that came out. Yay, sounds like someone I know. He can keep the mask on for a while, but it starts to slip when his perceived world isn't reality. A buddy of mine case as a public defender. A gal was busted on drug charges, and told him she didn't have any drugs on her when they arrested her. He thought, okay, we'll use that. Turns out, she didn't have any drugs on her when they arrested her because she just sold them to an undercover cop. Lawyer in the UK. I acted for a member of a famous pedophile hunting group. My client was charged with various offences relating to his vigilantism, most seriously, causing grievous bodily harm with intent. He wanted me to fight the case on a public interest defence point that is not available to him in statute or at common law, contrary to my advice. I followed his instructions as I'm bound to do. If the state won't punish pedophiles properly, then it's left to men like my client to take the law into their own hands. A horseshit argument for a whole host of reasons. His laptop was seized by police and submitted for forensic examination. He had a staggeringly huge database of child pornography on it. He himself was a massive pedo. Edit. Spelling edit too. Spelling again. I beat up pedophiles in my spare time, no one will suspect a thing. There can be only one. Little late to the party, but here goes, an obligatory not my client. Company I worked for at the time was doing due diligence before acquiring a small tech startup. The COO of the tech startup was a well-liked guy in the company, friendly and outgoing. Though we had heard rumblings that the COO was rather hands-on with the work and with female employees. Apparently there was a walk-away package proposed to the COO that would let him keep a sizable portion of his post-acquisition bonus because a young woman who worked in their sales department had filed HR complaints against the COO and obtained counsel. I sat in on the meeting with the COO and the company's retained lawyers while they grilled him about his contacts with the young woman. The COO denied ever having contact with her within the company without multiple other people present. Those people said his behavior toward her in the meetings didn't raise any flags. The COO emphatically denied having any contact with her outside of work. The lawyers asked the question a half dozen different ways, and each time the COO denied any out-of-work contact. Later we meet with the woman and her lawyer with the COO not present. Her lawyer gives us a rather graphic card that came with a bouquet of flowers addressed to her from the COO. The guy had an account with a florist linked to his credit card. When the company retained lawyers confronted him, he said, "But I never had contact with her. It's not like I delivered the flowers myself." COO got terminated for cause, so no walk-away package. At her request, the woman was given PTO until after the acquisition, then moved to another one of the companies under our umbrella. Friend of mine is a defense attorney. He was representing a guy with a lengthy record for assault. Basically, this guy took an AC unit and threw it at his girlfriend. My buddy tells me he was able to get a plea deal for 1 year probation, no jail time. The judge is all ready to accept the deal when he asks the defendant if he had anything he would like to say. The defendant responds, "Yay, I don't know why they charging me with assault, I never touched her. I just threw an AC at her. This is bullshit." Judge rescinded plea deal because of defendant's attitude, lack of remorse, went to trial and got a year in jail. The idea of having an AC unit thrown at me is honestly terrifying. Custody case. Client failed to tell me he was previously convicted of felony child abuse for breaking 16 bones in an infant's body. Minor traffic cases can be the worst for this, believe it or not, because they are short and simple and oftentimes the client isn't there, so if you get blindsided by something critical there's often no chance to consult with them to turn things around. I had a simple speeding case, 70 miles per hour in a 55. No big deal. If she does a driving improvement course the court will usually dismiss or reduce those, since her driving record wasn't bad. When I showed up for her, I found out that she had been driving 70 up an unplowed snow lane, to get around all the others cars traveling in the lane that had been plowed because they were driving too slow. I didn't know it was even possible to drive 70 on fresh snow. The officer stated he'd already cut her a break by not writing the ticket for reckless driving, and the judge politely agreed he didn't feel comfortable reducing it under those circumstances. When I called her up after court to confirm, she did claim she'd just forgotten to mention it. Now maybe I've lived too much of my life in the South, but that just boggles my mind as a detail you'd forget when hiring a lawyer for that incident. I would have told her in advance that hiring us was a waste of money, not to mention the hassle of taking an 8-hour class, and she should probably just go ahead and pay this one. I legitimately do that all the time during consults, give my honest assessment if the case is even worth doing, and so by omitting that detail she harmed herself for no reason. At least she took it well and didn't get defensive. That he filmed his offenses for his YouTube channel. The cops didn't even know, a witness brought it up on day 3 of a trial. It was a nice quick change of plea that afternoon. So you're saying, it's just a prank, bro? Isn't a valid legal defense? Not since Prankster v. Bro in 1986. What kind of crime was it? I want to know what the YouTube channel is. LMAO. Removed. Case as a paralegal. Negligence case. Client argued that a lack of street lights and a cyclist he couldn't see was responsible for him hitting a wire pole. Upon discovery, the first respondent's report indicated that they found the driver in the driver's seat, pants down, with porn playing on the phone. Wasn't difficult to figure out who was negligent at that point. Your Honor, if the cable repairman had simply fixed the cable in accordance with professional standard practices, my client would have had no other recourse but to keep his ostrich in the corral on the evening in question. Guy in prison hired me to request a modification of his sentence because he was doing very well, completing a lot of optional programs, no rule violations, etc. He had his family come in and pay and everything to get started. I asked the family and the client if he had requested modification before, because the law said that for his conviction, he could only request modification twice for any one sentence, regardless of if they were granted or denied. Swore up and down he'd never filed before. You can see where this is going. After spending a few hours going over records and preparing documents, a copy of the CCS, the case record basically, finally arrived. He'd personally filed for modification 6 times since he was sentenced with handwritten pleadings that were all denied. So the one he hired me for was a waste of time and would never be considered at all. My house was robbed. In addition to all the stuff the thief took, he also stole a bunch of my suits and all of my neckties. I had a big collection, like 100 or so. However, the thief left fingerprints on a hard plastic box that I kept spare change in. Fast forward 3 months, the thief is caught in the act of robbing another house in the same neighborhood, same detectives on my case and this new theft. They fingerprint the guy and the fingerprints match the ones from my house. At the thief's arraignment, I see him stroll in wearing my suit and my tie. I tell the district attorney, he says there's really no way to prove it. However, the tie he chose to wear was a one-of-kind street map of San Francisco and I still had all the documentation to prove it. The district attorney's eyes widen and he informs the judge. The judge has the thief placed under arrest again for possession of stolen property. The thief's lawyer was dumbfounded. It was a nice end to a rough situation. I'm a court-appointed attorney for qualifying individuals in family matters. Termination of parental rights case. Have been fighting to argue that parent is stable, working lawfully, has a suitable apartment, doesn't need psychotropic meds anymore, ready to be a parent, etc. After a few months of negotiating with all the parties and Department of Children, Court Services, we have a pre-trial to try and convince guardians. I meet with my client before the hearing to see if anything changed. Nope, all good, let's get my kids. Great, that's not happening today, but let's try. We get going in court. My client, who is super hot-headed and quick to anger, gets riled up and goes off on the guardians. Screaming in open court. It doesn't end there, but reveals 1. That no longer is working, 2. No longer in apartment, 3. Doesn't want to have a relationship with guardians despite her kids loving them, 4. Won't send her kids pictures of the toys they miss and can't have, 5. Plans on moving out of state, 6. Thinks they can live as a family off of state aid when she gets then back, and is 4 months pregnant. All in the matter of 15 seconds, I was too shocked to even react. Speechless. Not the image of stability and parental fitness I've been trying to paint since last July. Edit to clarify, client was working really hard to get everything right, and legitimately had everything going for her prior to this hearing. I was not making false representations or trying to